Like, it take a real motherfucker to get sober.
Entrepreneurship is a mindset. It's not necessarily what you do. Because I promise you, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you will be okay.
What do we know about trauma scientifically? It changes the chemistry in the brain.
We can relate to one another, you know. That's why this camaraderie is so awesome, because we just get it and we don't judge.
You can't fight new battles with old tactics. Your thoughts become your words become your actions become your character becomes your destiny.
What do you want to be remembered by when you're gone? What's Grounded, fam? It's your boy Johnny Gio. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Grounded Phoenix podcast. As always, the purpose of this channel is to express vulnerability and expand awareness to addiction, trauma, and mental health. I have Vlada side with me right now. That's the Instagram name. I love that name.
Instagram
How you doing?
handle. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We were just talking about the whole Instagram name thing, how I think like mine is kind of too serious, and you had a really cool story about yours.
Yeah. I mean, sort of cool. I wish I could say that I made it, but I didn't.
So we're going to chop it up right now, and you have an interesting point of view because you are in recovery, and then you're also a therapist. So I'm going to go ahead and pick your brain because I'm always trying to learn some new things, and please enlighten me. From what I know, you have 9 years sober, or almost 9 years?
Almost 9 years, yeah. My son was actually born on my 8-year anniversary, so he kind of stole the thunder. Yeah. So now my anniversary is, well, his birthday, so that comes first.
Yeah, of course. Was it kind of like bittersweet that day where you just like, oh, my son's born, and you're just like, oh, he's going to steal my thunder now?
Yeah, his due date was like 2 weeks later, so it was really random that it was that specific day, but I thought it was a beautiful thing, so.
Yeah, are you big on sober dates? Are you big on like, oh, I'm like 9 years now?
So I was, and like we talked a little bit the other day, a lot of my views have changed about sobriety in general. And I'll just preface this whole talk that we have that a lot of the things I say are based on my experiences and my observations. Nothing I say is, fact or maybe someone else's experience, and I'm well aware of that. But the whole sobriety day, for me, it's just a time of reflection. Like there's something meaningful about a date and a time and place when events took place, right? So I got sober at 10, 11, 12 was my sobriety date, and that time was just significant because it was the darkest time of my entire life leading up to getting sober. And so every year around the time, I just can't help but reflect about where I was and then where I am now. Right. But as far as like the time, I think that could be a double-edged sword for some people, for sure.
Right on. Yeah. Similar to you, for some reason, like as I accumulate more time, oh man, like I just really don't emphasize too much on it. I just more look at like where I am in life. Like, okay, like I have this, maybe I put too much pressure on myself, but I'm just like, damn, okay, you have this much time on you. Now, like, what do you have to show for it? You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I look at it. And so sometimes it's like a date for me to call myself out on my shit. Like, all right, motherfucker, like 6 years is coming up. Like, are you still at your fucking mom's house and shit like that? You know what I'm saying? So that's a big one. So you were talking about like the dark side that you were in. Talk a little bit about how life used to be before you were sober. I know it's kind of hard to get into that and like how it used to be because we're just not quite there anymore. But if you could just kind of break down what life used to be like.
So when I look back on my life, it feels like I've had so many lives in one, and I've lived in so many states. So a lot of the chapters I think fall into like where I lived at the time. And a lot of that is like that geographical cure. I just thought that moving would fix everything and changing the people around me would fix everything. But everywhere I went, I was there, and I was the problem, but I was also the solution. Like I was the one that had to get better for everything around me to get better. And looking back on I can't hear myself, so if I sound a little off, that's why. But looking back on my life and that person, it's so far, but yet so close. Like, I keep her very close to me, you know what I mean? And back to like what you were saying, the older I get in sobriety, the more I realize how much I don't know about everything in life, you know? I always want to consider myself a student of everything, and the day that I wake up and think I know everything is, you know, death for me. Like, I don't want to get to that point. But life was dark, you know, I couldn't stop using. I held on to a lot of toxic relationships. Still to this day, not sure if I was the main toxic person. They were a little bit of both. I didn't have much of a life. Like, I was just a shell. And it progressed, you know, fast. The first time I went to treatment, I was 19. And then I actually got sober. I had, you know, almost 2 years at one point. And then, you know, went back out, and it was just really fast. You know, when I relapsed, I remember I really had this desperate need to feel normal. I just wanted to smoke a little pot, drink a little wine at dinner, you know, be classy, and it didn't work. And I know we kind of talked a little bit about the concept of relapse, and I think everyone is so different when it comes to that. But my brain could not understand normal and a little bit and balance.
Oh, for sure. I understand that feeling. And I like how you said that, like, no matter where you went, you know, like, there you were. And, like, no matter how much, like, you thought it was, like, the exterior things or, like, whatever state you were in, like, you know, you were in your body, you were in your mindset. Now, I don't know what it was for you, but for me, I know I had, like, a lot of trauma. I had a lot of this victimized mindset that kind of fueled the way I drank and the way I used specific drugs. Now that you have, like, you know, that you're a therapist and you're very knowledgeable on things, like, can you kind of put your finger on, like, why perhaps you were using so much, or the way you used?
Yes and no. I think we think trauma is this big event that took place, you know, and it could be something little or big. And for two people can experience a similar, maybe same event, and one of them may be traumatized from it and another may not be. So trauma is very tricky like that. It's not black and white like a lot of people think. And for a long time, I went both ways. You know, I thought, poor me, it's my childhood, it's my family, it's this. And then I thought back to, like, no, my childhood was as good as it could have been, whatnot. But then the longer time I had sober, all these little things kept, like, coming out, you know, and I realized, it's the trauma that I went through as a child. You know, my parents got divorced really young. When I was really young, I moved around, countless schools, I think 6 schools by the time I was in 8th grade, 2 states. Didn't make friends easily. I don't want to say bullied. That word is, I don't know. People were not nice to me. So it created this environment for a perfect storm of, I just don't want to feel those yucky things anymore. But I had a good life, so I always felt guilty, thinking that it was anything other than, I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born in this country. We moved to America when I was 3, and my family, we had nothing, right? So a lot of issues regarding that, plus divorce, plus moving, plus, like, family drama. A lot of anxiety. And I look at my kids and myself when I was 4 years old or 5 years old, and completely different life, right? And I think that has a lot to do with this foundation that we build our lives upon. Our caretakers, how we see the world, through what lens, and mine was very lonely. I was an only child until I was 16, and I just so desperately wanted closeness around me. I used to have, I'm embarrass myself right now, but I would have these, like, families of imaginary siblings, because I just wanted so bad someone to go through life with, you know. And my parents were like 20 when they had me, so looking back, they did the best they could. And then, you know, you get to high school, and I had a normal time in high school. I think I was always curious about drugs. I always tell the story of the DARE people, police officers. They came to my school when I was in 5th grade, and me and my friend were like looking through the packet. We're like, oh my God, we're excited to do drugs, but we're gonna wait till high school to do like the hard stuff. I was in 5th grade having this mindset, and no one ever talked to me about drugs. I don't remember being talked to about it until I was like 16 or 17. And I just thought it was cool to be rebellious and go out and drink, and I just couldn't wait to have that be my life. And it's interesting because that girl that I was sitting in, she came from a similar, you know, life, like I guess broken home, whatever. And I talked to her years later through social media, and she was never an addict, never went down that road, very successful. And I smoked weed with her and drank with her for the first time. We were in 5th or 6th grade. And it's just those things where I have people in my past that I for sure think are gonna like end up in a bad spot. I've seen them years later, and they're like, no, I just like grew out of it. And I think there's a difference between a true addict and people that use. Then there are people that misuse and become a little dependent maybe, and some life event makes them like step back and be like, no, I'm done. There's so many levels, I believe, of addiction where it's not this like box that anyone can fit into, yet we're treating people that way in like recovery or treatment. And it's just not that simple, and that's what makes it very, very hard, I think, for people to get sober and stay sober long term. Right. I think I went off the question.
No, it's all good. Very good insight you provided, actually. And by all means, get vulnerable and be embarrassed. It's okay. There's no judgment here. I straight up clown on myself sometimes on here, so that is definitely welcomed. So you mentioned the program, and you also mentioned that you relapsed. What was it for you that, was it a different program, or how come this time around it worked and it helped you stay sober?
That's a good question. I think what I realized in treatment the last time, I realized a few things. One is that the first time I got sober, I got off of drugs and alcohol, but I still like used food as a way to cope. Relationships, men, sex, the gym, working out. I mean, everything you can think of. I skydived. You know, I started skydiving when I first got sober. I just wanted something to like feel alive. And I never really did the inside work. Or maybe I did a little bit. I don't want to say that I didn't, but I didn't focus on that. I was 23, you know, when first time I got sober. I wanted to just like live, whatever that meant. And then the second time, I think I was 26, reveals my age. But my relapse was very like, sorry, I'm like cold, so I'm like shivering. It was very dark, like emotionally. And I realized once you've been clean and then you're not, I'm like, today I'm not going to use as I'm like going to use. You know, I couldn't not. And I knew this war going on in my mind, and I'm like, can I swear?
Do the damn thing. Yeah.
People swear, okay. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then I was like, I know what's happening. I know exactly what's happening. I've been learning about this for the past God knows how many years. I don't want to use, yet I am walking out the door to go use. I have no money, yet I'm finding a way to get money. I'm manipulating everyone. Everyone's on to me. I don't care. I'm like, have such a thick veil of denial that it's I don't want to say it's funny because it's not, but it was like stopping me. And then like a series of events happened. I like had an intervention, I think twice. I got robbed. I flunked out of college. Like all these things were happening. And a friend of mine actually called my mom, because I was living in Mississippi at the time, and I stayed sober there, so all my friends were in recovery, and my mom's living not near me, so over the phone it's easy to pull off this facade. And my friend called my mom and was like, she is not okay, like someone needs to do something, right? And then I just like had an intervention in this moment of I had nothing left. I had like no money, no job. I got fired, I kicked out of school. Nothing. I had nothing left. I didn't even have the energy to fight. And it was at that moment where I realized like the drugs aren't even helping. They're not even numbing anything anymore. And I was so depressed and so unhappy, and I was like, it can't get worse, and I had no other choice. And it was the first time I went to treatment, and I don't know, something was different. I just really worked on myself and cried all the time and was just it was ugly, but it was so beautiful at the same time. Like a phoenix rising.
There you go. That's right.
Exactly.
Something you said is that you felt like you had no fight. And one thing that I like to say always is that I don't always need to fight something in order to defeat it. So I just wanted to mention that. So this program that helped you, was it AA, or what type of program was it? And then now I know that you have like a different view on it. Why is that?
I got sober at AA. Everywhere I went to treatment was AA based. It's all I really knew. At first it was a little weird. The first time I went to an AA meeting, I was in high school. I got in trouble with some pot, and they made us go to meetings, and it was like, this is weird. But then when you go somewhere with like a younger crowd and everyone's speaking your language, so it seemed like it was okay. And I understood a little bit about, it's a very complex book to dive into, and it's that argument, especially for addicts, where it talks all about alcohol, and it's hard to relate to if you've never had a problem with alcohol. But I did the steps, I did everything. I still relapsed. So what I don't like is when people do whatever they do and then they relapse, and then other people are like, well, what were you missing? What were you not doing? And I really don't like that, because it's never just one obvious thing, but I don't, so I got sober again in AA in Florida, and CA and AA were very similar, but the one meeting that I went to in particular it was like 100 people in the room, and it was like a big book study, and it was so lively and real. There was no one, being robotic and saying things that you hear in every single meeting, and I just fell in love with it. But now, like I said, the older I get in life, really, and in sobriety, I realized that there's so many ways for people to get sober. And the basic principles of AA, NA, CA, whatever A, is just be a good person, work on yourself, help other people, and like progress spiritually, whatever that means. But there are a lot of people that don't believe in God, and they can still get sober. And I don't like that there's all these boxes, right? If you don't fit in one, you're doomed. And that started to shift when I became a therapist, because I had clients that were from all walks of life that had different beliefs, different histories, different traumas, different religious beliefs, and I couldn't say, well, you're not going to get sober if you don't do this, but I also didn't believe it. It made me not believe it anymore. I wanted to help that individual the best I can. And I didn't love the one place I worked at was very like AA based, and I didn't love shoving that down people's throats. I couldn't do that. So yeah, I don't know. That's where I got sober, and I'll talk shit about it, but when someone else does, I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, don't talk about my mama. I can talk about her, but you can't, like that type of thing. Right. But I also get what turns people off. I really understand. And a lot of it's began to turn me off as well as I went more and more.
Right. Very well said. Now you talked about like your clients and like people coming from, you know, diverse backgrounds and religious beliefs and all of that. What I want to know is, what is something like a pattern that you're noticing when you're doing these sessions, you know, without getting too into it, that is both good and bad? Because like the purpose of this channel is to really show different forms of recovery. And like if I notice, like let's say with the sessions that you're doing, there's like something in particular from your sessions that you're noticing as a collective with addicts or maybe people with mental health, that I probably could be asking better questions, or, you know, talking about specific subjects.
I think you hit the nail on the head, the trauma aspect of it. And I think, you know, I've experienced people that have like obvious trauma. It's all there, right? Every sign that would help someone become an addict later in life. But there's some people that I have run into that feel guilty because they're like, I have had the perfect life, the greatest childhood, the greatest parents, and they're like, I don't know why I'm like this. And I think especially with the opiate epidemic and everything, like we've seen a lot of people that lived completely normal lives, right? Didn't really drink, professionals well into like late in life, get in an accident, get prescribed something, get overprescribed, become addicted, then they're on the street using heroin. When you see enough of that, you start to realize, okay, is it addiction or is it the substance? Like what came first? Because obviously they weren't on a path leading them there. They got injured, had to take this medication, and then got addicted to it. Millions and millions of Americans, I mean, we started seeing this everywhere, right? And then so sometimes that's the answer, right? Someone didn't have any trauma in their life. They didn't really have anything that would point like addiction or a broken family or anything like that. They try a substance and their brain chemistry in that substance, they just get addicted.
Right.
You know, some people get addicted to uppers while others only like downers. Then you see people that are like, I'll smoke anything if it gets me high, you know? So again, these levels and this like array of addiction. So it can be tricky because you have someone, you know, I remember a client specifically, normal man his whole life, right? Family, grandkids, accident, injured, opiates, heroin. It's like boom, 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 boom in like a year. And what am I going to, you know, it's hard to treat that because it's like at that point, you know, they're successful, they have families, they're on their own. It's hard to kind of give ultimatums. You know, when you're young, you can tell teenagers or in their early 20s, parents can kind of be like, you're going to treatment or else. But when you support yourself, it's very hard. That person has to find it within themselves to want to live differently. And that can be a lot harder for some people than others.
Right. What is something that you've noticed? I'm
So-
sorry for interrupting. What is something that you've noticed
Oh, you're good.
that is helping people in that particular situation where they, you know, support themselves and they're older and they get into this accident and they're prescribed this strong medication and they get hooked, and then before you know it, they're like in the streets slamming heroin?
Well, at that point, they don't have anything anymore. If they're, you know, they've lost their family, they've lost their business, they've lost their house, they've lost everything. And then that adds to the traumatic experience, this trauma of like, who have I become? What is happening to me? This is my life, and now this is it now? That's crazy. And so it's really hard to come up from that when you knew a better life. I think, I'm
Right.
assuming, I guess. And from what I've been told. So it's hard. It's hard, especially when all they want to do is leave treatment. I think just loving people and listening. Everyone wants
Right.
to be heard. I think that's why AA is so effective, because you can go in there and you can raise your hand and people will listen to you. You get
Right.
a chance to talk. You can't be interrupted. No one can tell you it's this place where people can be heard. And I think that's all that everybody wants at the end of the day.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree. I actually just opened up to meetings, actually. Like I was talking to you before, I've managed to be sober like almost 6 years. And just recently, you know, I met some friends, that started these meetings, these non-denominational meetings actually, and I like that because it wasn't so like AANA. It was just like, you know, even if you're like just a sex addict or a food addict, whatever, you with trauma, you don't even have to be an addict. You could be sober curious or a normie, whatever come, you are heard right there. And I just felt so at home, and I think that's something important that you mentioned, because there's not really any judgment there, and it's just like you can open up. So that's something that has helped me really, because I've been doing good, you know, not going to meetings or anything, but I think this has helped me out a little bit more, knowing that like shit, like I don't have to be all by myself. And yeah, so far it's worked, but like now I'm like on another level where it's just like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So for younger people that are watching, I think that like they just get so turned off by meetings and AA. I think probably first it's cool to maybe open up to other ways of like self-development, to probably, you know, establish that frequency or vibration, to be open-minded, and to maybe see somebody else's point of view and welcome it for personal growth. I would like to ask you something. I know you're always listening to people and helping them out. Like, I know for myself, sometimes I give advice, and like it's hard. As good as of advice that I give, it's hard for me to sometimes use it in my own life. Is there something, or do you find yourself doing that?
100%, all the time. I mean, I don't ever really give advice, and with clients, it's more helping people put the pieces together and get to know themselves on a deeper level. And treatment, when you're working in treatment, it's a little different, because I mean, it's very acute. People are there like detoxing and for a very short stay, but with friends and things like that, yeah, I can like spew out the best advice, and then it's like, which one aren't you taking it? You know what I mean? I think we do that as human beings. Like, you know, it's much easier to say it than do it, you know? Even as parents, right? Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. Oh man, I relate to that one so much. What is the best gift sobriety has gifted you so far in your 9 years almost?
I'll cry right this minute. My family, my husband, I mean my children, but without him, I wouldn't have them. And I think, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, just like this calm, like home that we have, this home full of love and respect and boundaries, and it's very different than, we grew up very different, him and I, so for him this is all
right
how he grew up. You know, his parents are still married and happily married, and when I was younger or growing up, I remember like I always wanted, if I was going to have children, I wanted to give them the most normal life. I wanted, and in my head I had this image of what normal meant, right? 2 parents, fun house, dancing at dinner time, like car rides, vacations, going to the zoo, you know, food fights, like everything, like down to like details, right? Like a fun, loving family, no yelling, no hitting, nothing, like no trauma, right? And it's sometimes I have these moments with my family, and I'm like, this is like what I wanted for my kids and my life. And without me being sober, I wouldn't even, you know, my heart breaks for this new generation coming up with no parents, or with one parent, or getting raised by their grandparents, and it's so sad. And I just thank God every day, because, you know, it's only 2021. 5 years from now, I could be living a very different life, and I understand that very clearly. I like to say that I hope that I don't, and I do everything I, you know, need to do to take care of myself for that not to happen. But again, I've heard so many stories that this is, you know, I'm sort of like have trauma from listening to trauma, if you will. And it's hard to not put yourself in those shoes. Like, what if that was me? What if I didn't see my kids ever again because I can't stop using? Like, that's really hard to digest. Or what if something happens, you know, to my kids? Will I be able to be sober? I ask myself that a lot. And I'll tell you now, probably not. You know, like I don't know. I'm not that level of like emotional stability, I'll be honest. Like can be a little cuckoo, but that is the biggest gift, definitely. Not just my kids, but how I'm raising them. And I wouldn't do that if I wasn't sober.
Oh, 100%.
For sure.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I play the tape like, fuck, what if something happens to my kids? And I kind of make like this reservation for like, if this shit happens, you know, perhaps I'm not going to be okay. What is one thing, like when that thought comes to mind, or like these feelings, what is something that helps you out to get out of that funk, you know? Because I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes like I really do believe that our thoughts and like and especially when you apply emotions to these thoughts, like they come true. Like you manifest that shit. So like I just try to stop that shit dead in its tracks, because I do not want that. I do not want that to happen.
The interesting thing about like thoughts is sometimes you'll be having a normal ass day and a thought will just like come in there, and it didn't even come from anywhere, right? It'll be like you'll be driving and like you'll think about your 4th grade gym teacher or something random, and you're like, what? Like our brain is so powerful in that sense. It's like thoughts, we have so many thoughts per day. But when it goes to like a very dark place, and it does a lot, you know, especially with my kid. I mean, my daughter had her first day at camp today, and she got picked up by like a van. First camp, and that was the first time she's ever got, you know, me and my husband are both like spiraling, like, oh my God. But then it's just like she's okay. There's no like evidence of anything harmful happening to her. But as far as like the other thoughts, some of them are just like natural. So sometimes I just like lean into it, take a breath, and I'm like, everything's all good. Like we're happy, we're healthy.
Yeah.
I have to do that with little things too, you know. Sometimes that seems so big in the moment. I just look at the bigger picture, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the day.
Yeah, and these thoughts, it's crazy. Like these random thoughts of like your 4th grade gym teacher just kind of comes up out of nowhere, and I believe it's because of. So I'm a big fan of like looking into the conscious and subconscious mind, and like a part of like my personal development and recovery is understanding both, and understanding like that the subconscious mind is like the one that runs most of the time. And if you're not conscious about what you're thinking about, you know, you're gonna basically consume all of these thoughts and all these things that probably are not even yours. You're just absorbing all these things. And so when this stuff comes up, sometimes I'm just like, holy shit, like this, wait a minute, this may not even be your thought. You know, this was like probably is like from such a long time ago, and like this doesn't have to be what it is right now, you know. So just kind of take a step back from that. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. I know you mentioned that you did AA, but you're not actively in the program. What do you mean by that? Or what are some things that have helped you now to maintain your sobriety for this long?
So when I moved from Florida about 3 years ago, and in Florida, I mean, AA is different. All, you know, AA, NA, all the A's are different geographically, right? So it was very different in Florida where I got sober. It was like a recovery capital bubble. Everyone's sober, you know, everyone. When I moved to PA, I had a very different experience. I didn't know anybody. You know, we just moved in the dead of winter. I had a 1.5-year-old, so I was trying to like go to meetings and meet people, but and then I started, you know, working, and I felt like I'm done hearing people all day at work. I go to a meeting, and it became like a therapy session. Like everyone's just venting, and I became so emotionally exhausted from it that it was not doing me, it wasn't serving me. But then I kept going, and I'm like, why am I going? Because I've been I don't want to use the word brainwashed, but kind of to think like if I don't go to meetings, I'm not doing well. And I was like, no, what? No, that's crazy. I'm doing just fine. But when I go to a meeting, I want to fucking like, you know, pluck my eyelashes out individually, waiting for it to end. I'm working all day. I have a 1.5-year-old. 4 meetings a week. That's 4 nights out of my life. Like, I can't go to yoga. I can't work out. Like, I'm not getting. It's if you want to do that and that benefits your life, like we talked about earlier. You know, everyone needs people that go to meetings, that love it, that are there, that feel like they want to be there. They live to serve others. They live to help the newcomer. That's their life mission. Absolutely do that. But if you're going and it's draining you and you're not doing anything else for yourself, you have to ask yourself why. And for me, recovery is about, you know, reading, journaling, meditating, doing nothing, you know, spending time with my kids, taking a walk, doing things with my family, doing things by myself, going to the gym. All those things make a person's life. And I know a lot of people in AA that just all they do is go to meetings, and I know a lot of people that have been sober for a long time, and they're doing things that behind closed doors that make sense, that are that they don't want coming to light, whatever that is. And it just seems like, not to judge, it's do you, but don't look down on people that, you know, don't go to a million meetings to like cover up their conscience or whatever. So I think, you know, whatever helps you sleep at night, if you're being a good person and helping others anywhere, it doesn't have to be in the room. Because when I had my first child, you know, it was very difficult for me to sponsor the 5 girls I was sponsoring before, going to the 5 meetings a week I was going to, giving everything of myself because I had a newborn. But there are people in AA who would be like, gotta find the time, gotta do it, I do it. And I'm like, you and I may be not the same person.
Yeah.
You know, I'm breastfeeding a child right now, 30 hours out of the day. I am not going to a meeting right now. But I always had very close connections, like solid group of people I got sober with were all sober. Fabulous sponsor who's just another person that's sober that you just have contact with. So the support from other human beings, which is what AA is, but in a room, is what keeps me going and keeps me afloat. And just constantly like checking myself, and will I ever go back to AA? Yeah, I mean, maybe not, I don't know. I think after the pandemic hit, I went to like one Zoom meeting online, and it was a little difficult, you know, for me to pay attention. But I think just that relationship with self is what's really important, and AA helps people find that.
Right. I agree. I agree with you. Sometimes even doing this, and then I'll go to like meetings, I'm just like, damn, I don't know if I even benefit from this right now, because I'm doing these podcasts, or I'm talking to people on social media about whatever they're going through. Sometimes even just going to a meeting can be actually overwhelming instead of healing. So I definitely understand that. And like you said, you know, like behind closed doors, some people are not practicing those spiritual principles, you know, and if you are, but you just so happen to not be going to meetings, I think, you know, more power to you. And it's not that it makes you a bad person, or you should do that because everybody else is, as long as you're working on yourself and you have all these things, you know, you're doing on the side, you know, that brings you happiness, and you have your own family now, you know, not a made up one, you know, so thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And that's actually really funny. So before I let you go, I always ask people this last final question, and that is that I believe there's 3 things in life that are guaranteed, and they're actually marked in our gravestone, and that is our birthday, the day we pass, and that dash in the middle that for some reason we overlook. And for me, it represents the life we led. How do you want to be remembered by when you're gone?
This is so funny you bring this up. I also want to mention about the gym teacher thing. That was a random thought. I don't even remember my thinking about this whole time.
Oh,
like,
my
that sounded
God.
really weird.
I remember.
But the dad, I used to do that. Go ahead.
I remember having a crush on a gym teacher, but like in the 7th grade. So that could be it. That could be it.
Yeah. I I don't know why I said that. But the dash, I used to do a group on that, right? We would read this poem. I don't know if that's the one you're referencing. And I would have everyone like do this dash. And it was so interesting how that affected some people. Like some people were like, this is stupid. I'm not doing this, you know, but my dash, I just want to live like a meaningful life. I want to travel. I want to raise good humans. You know, I want them to have the best life, and not like materialistic, but just love and adventure and parents that they feel listen to them, and I want them to feel important, and just like create memories with my family. There's so many like things that I can't even dream up that I know will happen because I couldn't have dreamt this, you know. I couldn't have imagined, and oftentimes I go back to that dark place, you know, in 2012, and I'm sitting there and I really like to get into like what I was feeling, who I was, and I sit there and it's like, it's insane how different. I mean, to this day, like when my family sees me or my kids, they're like, still say something like, I cannot believe this is like your life that you've created, you know, and it's special.